Hello, I am Robert Walker, co-writer for this film, DP, assistant DP, assistant line producer behind Holly and Iron Liz, I guess. I wear many hats, none of them very well, except for my blue fedora, I guess. So, talk to you a little bit about this movie. First thing that's interesting is this is not the original opening to the film. My opening was completely different, and I'll be talking at length about this probably throughout the course of the commentary. One thing I want to say straight up is I have no bitterness about this. Doug and I had fights, of course, about how things would go, but we're collaborating right now in the 4 year. We're fine. There's no problem. So if you're listening to this, is like, wow, he's angry and bitter. I'm really not. We're having a lot of fun doing the 4 years. So take that, and take it with a grain of salt and everything as I talk about this. We're fine. But filmmaking's a collaborative process. So I just thought I'd explain the creative process behind this film. Because I thought that'd be probably a little more interesting than saying, oh, there's that guy and there's that guy. So this opening was Doug's idea, and it's very well shot. Doug and I are huge Coen Brothers fans. We love Fargo. I think Doug was tapping into a lot of that. You can see already the wind. Chicago weather was not cooperating at all. I'll be getting into that as well. But this was shot, I think, outside of DeKalb near Doug's old alma mater, NIU. And I think he made really good use of the sort of desolate landscape in a bleak Chicago spring. This is Jim Trokin playing our kind of 90s kid type character, though he wasn't intentionally doing that. He didn't know who 90s kid was. He was just doing Bill and Ted. And it was a Battlefield promotion because he was supposed to play someone else, but due to the schedule getting switched up, he couldn't play one of the cloaks, so we cast him in this role. So, but yeah, the original opening to this film, as I had envisioned it, was Malachite actually at a sort of D&D game. Completely different from this. He was at this game, and it was one of these, the joke was one of these things is not like the other, and it was all of these geeks and then just Malachite sitting there in this outfit. And basically the way it worked is it was revealed that he's playing this game, and they're like, well, why are you here? You don't like us, you don't do this. And originally I was going to have Brian Hines as sort of a villain, actually sort of working under Malachite's spell, and he had invited him, and at the end of it, Malachite goes on this speech about how, you players, think you're reenacting real fantasy and real magic, but you have no idea, you have no clue, and basically he tells this story, something effective, where once were green fields and wizards and all this, now we're cities of alabaster stone, and it was sort of the technology rant that Doug goes with, but he says, what do you do? What do you do? And the other kid there says, roll, and Malachite rolls, and it's like Snake Eyes or something. He says, oh, you lose, and basically sucks the souls out of these gamers. And that was supposed to set up this idea that he hates gamers, he hates the way they've made a mockery of his sort of existence, and that he's basically recouping his magic by sucking people's souls. But at the same time, he has to use gamers to basically find this gauntlet, and that was going to be the thing. He was looking for people worthy or not so worthy enough when he comes upon the critic to be able to do this quest for him, and if they just seemed, not worth it, he would just kill them. Doug went with this intro instead, and I think it's a good intro. I don't really have a problem with it. I didn't like it in the script, but when I saw it filmed, I was like, okay, it's actually really brilliant. My two problems with it actually is it doesn't further the plot any. It just, he blows a guy up, which is cool, but it doesn't reveal that much or anything about the character. And the other problem, which I think I share with Lewis a bit, is it's a bit of a disconnect because it's so good of an opening. Doug did such a spectacular job that it's almost maybe disappointing when you just cut to Joe. And it turns into sort of a dumbbell scene in the dumbbell movie after that. This was such a great setup that it almost feels maybe thrown out, but I could be wrong about that. I don't know. Jim did the intro there with the gauntlet. He did a spectacular job. My one contribution was I added the lens flare, the glimmer to the Suburban Nights logo because I always liked Excalibur, and they have that little shimmering glow in Borman's film when it says Excalibur. The intro credits by CR, I think, are spectacular. I love his drawings. Doug wanted a Bedknobs and Broomsticks type feel with the tapestries, like he did in Kickassia, and I absolutely love it. I did actually add a couple of finishing touches to it. I had the zoom in and some of the slow pans on the names. I told Doug I thought that would work better. But this really sucks you into it, and I really like what Doug did here in particular with the credits. It's just so much of an interesting setup. I don't know if it works as a whole. It feels like there was a different movie going on, and then we cut into this one. I think Doug's argument is that worked for the better because it's supposed to be this mixture of sort of drama and the stakes are higher, and then you cut into comedy. But I think, once again, my problem is it doesn't have much to do with the plot, where I was trying to tie the plot in from the beginning, and it's actually completely different from Ed. I'll have to talk about that later, and Holly, whose contribution was so great. It's completely different from the opening even before that. I was going to do a Last Crusade opening with Doug and Brad duking it out over some copy of, I think it was going to be Garbage Pail Kids 2, and Brad, who we knew was going to be Indiana Jones, I was going to have him say, this belongs in a review, and Doug was just like, so do you, and he was just going to, like, Doug wanted to destroy the film because he hates the movie so much. Doug's point, which I think is really legit, is, well, that has nothing to do with the plot. That's a throwaway scene, and I agree completely with him. I question them what his opening had to do with the plot, but it looks cool, so great. Great cameo by Mike Michaud. There's whatever. This was all shot, I think, on the first day. You can tell it's cold. You can see Joe's breath. The weather from the beginning sucked. We had budgeted something like 5 or 6 days, and we lost 3 of them to rain, maybe 4. And Doug wrote all of these outside shots, and we were just screwed. Joe actually blew out his voice here, which is kind of funny. From the very get-go, Joe destroyed his voice, and he was recovering the rest of the way. This whole intro, I like the first quarter of the movie a lot overall. I think initially, though, this is where we started butting heads, because I thought the introduction with the costumes went on too long, even though Doug gets to the plot really quickly here, and I thought he did a pretty good job of just like, okay, here's the plot, we're dispensing with it. Interesting changes. We got into a lot of arguments early on. Doug wanted an eccentric millionaire, basically, to write the game. And I told him, this makes no sense. Why would a millionaire in his 80s write this game? You know, Dungeons & Dragons didn't take off really until the 70s. I was like, it just doesn't add up. And we had a lot of arguments over that till he finally relented. And I came up with the concept of Jaffers, this geek who stumbled upon the Gauntlet and wrote this game around it. And even then, though, we had such arguments over the very concept of the movie, because I wanted it to be about the geek culture, the Dungeons & Dragons, the LARPing, you know, and them getting sucked into this world, and Doug did not. Doug's just like, no, we're just going to put them in silly costumes. And I asked him, I'm like, well, why? And he's like, well, because it's funny that way. I'm like, okay, well, no, granted, it's hilarious, the costumes are great, but why are they dressing up? He's like, well, to get into the spirit of the game. I was like, well, then why don't you just make it a game? He's like, well, I don't want to explain the rules behind D&D. I was like, Doug, most people know the rules. Do you know our fans? And if not, you can explain it away really quickly. And he just was adamantly against it, and that started it. From the very beginning, there were just 2 completely separate visions. And as a collaborative process, I'd say this was the hardest project I have ever worked on, hands down. It just was insanely difficult from the get-go for a number of reasons. This, Doug and I both agreed on instantly, though, making Luke and Filmbrain have this relationship of fighting over Doug's attention. And Luke pulls it off so well. He's very much the Bugs Bunny to Filmbrain's Daffy. No matter what Luke does, it's perfect. And I have no disagreements over that. We both thought this was great. As a whole, I had some issues with the plot, because I thought, we've done this before. This is the Kick-Assy intro. Doug gathers them all together and throws them into a quick quest. I think Doug wanted it this way to dispense with the plot, but I kind of feel like we've done this before. Um, Take that for what it is. Benzai's scene there between Brad's legs was ad-libbed and very funny. We all were cracking up. Mars Girl, by the way, I loved her outfit. I didn't notice that to her halfway through filming. I was like, how many logos do you have on that outfit? Because I see the Rebel Alliance and the Empire. Oh my God, look at that face. And she had everything on there. It was like, man, you should market that. You should just like make that a jacket somehow. Talk to these people and find a way to make that happen. Here's Holly's cameo. We have a GNN reference for those who remember our old Batman Joker sketches. This is my dad playing like a Walter Cronkite character here. We wanted him with big 70s glasses and just to look old-fashioned, like this was shot like literally like 83, 82. Even though I think the backdrop looks a little too good for an early 80s newscast, but whatever. Look at that face. I'll probably talk about that costume later. Doug told me, by the way, just make the most ridiculous face you can think of, and he went with that. The Mazes and Monsters reference is actually a reference to an earlier draft I had in mind that was more Mazes and Monsters heavy. My dad's line, and in Happier News, the president has been shot, there was a payoff to that Doug cut, and I don't know why. It's always poor Juwario's lines. I wrote into the script, you know, well, what do you think? And Juwario says, that's awful. Like, just horrified. He's like, what's going to happen to Reagan? And Doug says, like, oh, don't worry, Reagan will be fine. So it was like a double joke that Juwario doesn't know what happened to Reagan, and neither did Doug. Doug nixed it, and I still don't know why, but for me, the joke doesn't work. It's just like the newscaster says, oh, well, the president has been shot. And some people were confused, like, are they talking about Obama? Are they talking about Reagan? So just didn't make much sense to me, but the plot itself, the intro here, I think it's kind of weak. It's very nostalgia critic, but again, I feel we've done this before. I love the... Doug told me draw a Lord of the Rings map, Rob. You're good at maps. He did the Kick-Assy map. So I coughed this thing up like the night before we started shooting. And it's lame. I think Doug's putting it on the DVD cover art, and I'm like, please don't, but he did it anyway. So the plot itself, there were a lot of hiccups, and I sort of acquiesced to it. I'm like, fine, maybe Doug's right, we should get the plot out of the way early. But my problem with, and this is Doug's writing style versus mine, is it made the middle part of the movie feel padded, in my opinion, because we just dispensed all of the plot info right here. And that line of Spoonie's, actually, we were at a convention in Tennessee 2 weeks before filming. We had like a long argument during the whole convention, because I said, Doug, we have to mention this is LARPing. This makes no sense. Why are they dressed up in costumes? He was fighting me. Like, just said, no, we are not doing that. So I managed to slip that one line in, and Doug said, that's okay. With Spoonie saying, well, where this is us going on a quest and dressing up in silly costumes for money. And Doug's like, yes. But that was to at least set up the fact that somehow this is a LARP. Even though we've taken everything else LARP-related out of it, this is at least a LARP. So it makes the fact that they're doing this give it some semblance of sense. And it was a long fight for that. And that, I think, was the frustrating thing with the collaboration, was trying to just get little things like that in there. And I gave up after a while. I literally was like, fine. I gave up on most other arguments. It's like, it took me 2 weeks just to get that one line in there. It's like, I'm done. Doug's speech there, I wrote, he cut it down, but I like sort of these rambling speeches of the critics where he's just not making any sense. They're very Tick-inspired. I love the Tick, and I love the way he just rambles on without making any sense, but thinks it's epic. This was one of the most white-knuckle shots here. And as a film flub, you can actually see the cord from one of the lights in the background in the earlier shot. Yeah, right here. Boom. That was me shaking my hand, like, because we only have one take, paper towels on the floor. If this take messed up, we were done. We did one practice where he didn't break it, but I did one pan in, and that was it. So I'm glad it came out perfectly, because if that didn't work, we were sunk. Doug's costume, people complain that it's not a real Link costume. Like, it looks too stupid. That was Doug's point. Whether you like it or not, that's up to you. That was the goal, though. I love Bargo looking at the camera. The goal was to basically make it look as silly as possible. So Doug found the most lamest Halloween Link costume he could find and went with that. It's not supposed to be the Link from Ocarina of Time or Twilight Princess. It's supposed to be as cartoony as possible, really lame. If you don't think it works, you don't think it works, but that's what we were going for. Some of the most fun I had writing was these speeches between Doug and Bargo, because Doug just was like, we just need to get rid of him, and it needs to not make sense. So I just have Doug running around in circles. Is something nothing? It's everything. And Bargo's buying it, and I enjoy little exchanges like that. Again, I like sort of nonsensical lines, where people are just talking in circles. I have fun doing that. And I think if you're smart, then this sets up that Mati is not going to make it. Spoiler alert. And that he will have this redemptive moment at the end where he's like, I'm sick of getting pushed around, Funny thing, this is actually Doug's real bedroom. We're renting a house. We are not rich. People seem to think like, oh, you have millions of dollars and you bought your own house. No. We're renting, and this was the kids' room of our landlords, and so it's meant for 4-year-olds, and we call it the Ronald McDonald room because it's painted maroon and yellow, and Doug has just decided never to repaint it. So if people are wondering why the hell does his bedroom look like that, that's the real reason. So the costumes themselves, people ask us, did you come up with the costumes, or did people have any input? We came up with them. Some people had input in how they wanted to do it, but a lot of them we knew early on. I love these shots. Doug was a master at doing these. Doug actually did a lot of cinematography as well as Ed. It was really a collaborative effort. Even though I get top billing, I'm not sure why, because it's really all three of us were doing work, but that was a fun shot to shoot. But I was at the bottom of the stairs, and I could see Doug's Triforce, and it just was like, ugh. I had to burn my eyes out with hot water. But we had a lot of ideas. I knew instantly it was like Spoonie as Gandalf. I saw his Ultima review where he busts out the Flame of Arnor, and I'm like, Doug, Spoonie as Gandalf, no questions asked. Doug's like, that's fine, that's awesome. I think Inigo Montoya came pretty quickly. Luke and Filmbrain came pretty quickly. I forget which of us came up with the idea that they're both the same costume, but it flowed naturally. It could have been either of us. This scene itself, this is where I kind of lose it, because the plot was going quickly, at least, even though I didn't agree with the way Doug was doing it. I don't know, introducing everybody one by one, we lost a half day or more of filming just to this one scene, because we had to have lights in there, because without the lights it looks like a David Fincher film. Everything's bathed in this sickly green. It's like all ambient lighting, and there's this moment you'll notice where it's sickly green occasionally in some shots. That's because we had this wonderful art imitates life moment where we had a scene directly out of Kick-Assia. I swear to God, the light went out. And I looked at it and I said, Doug, I think the bulb's out. We can just fix this. I think the bulb's come out of the socket. Doug adamantly goes, no, we don't have time. We're going to do this. Like, Doug, this will take me 2 minutes. Let's just do it. He's like, no, it's not happening. Phaelus, right behind me, as if he was directly out of Kick-Assia, is behind Doug and goes, actually, I think he's right. I think the light bulb's burned out. Doug ignores him completely. So this is one of the few moments where literally I said I wanted to smack Doug upside the head. I'm just like, this is dumb. So literally I'm just like, fine, Doug, you shoot the next 4 scenes without the lights for no good reason. I will go fix the light. Doug shoots about 3 or 4 scenes without the light. I go downstairs. In 3 minutes I've got it fixed. I come upstairs, and just like Doug is M. Bison, he looks at me and goes, that's amazing! What did you do? I said, well, like I said, it's the bulb was just out. I just put it right back in there. That's wonderful. And Phaelus, right behind Doug, just mumbles under his breath, oh, if only somebody had mentioned that. Just like he would have in Kick-Assia. So I don't know if this is a case of, like, sometimes the characters they're inhabiting sort of come out in real life, but we just had this total Kick-Assia scene play out in real life, and I'll always remember that story just because of how true to the characters it was, even though we were just sort of just offset, not really acting. Bennett hated that costume. I felt sorry for him. He kept choking on it. And Holly made this costume because we had no idea how we were going to do Phaelus as Rockbiter. Phaelus, by the way, is always a master of giving a creepy performance. We've decided that he always has to play the creep because he's such a nice guy in real life, but he taps into this weird place on screen and does it very well. To the point that I'm behind the camera and I'm just like, oh my god, he's literally giving me, like, goosebumps. The scene with Brad, I don't know if he's next, but I copied that directly out of, I want to say it's Raiders or one of the films. There was this shot where it starts off low and pans up above Jones. So I tried to copy that, and I was hoping Doug would do the creepy Raiders of the Lost Ark music, but he didn't. And the scene itself went way faster than I thought, but... Oh god, Mars Girl. Okay, this may have been my only regret, not because she doesn't turn in a great performance, she does. She got so much flack for her Japanese that was so uncalled for that I felt bad for her, and I was like, if I had to do it in retrospect, we wouldn't have asked her to do that, because we gave her the English first. I love the framing of the shot, by the way, and I told Mars Girl, look left and right and just be, like, confused and hate them. She got so much flack for this, and we told her, we gave her the English first, we said, translate this into Japanese. And we made it very clear, we're like, we don't need it to be perfect. This is aimed towards English viewers. I never asked her to do a perfect accent. Doug didn't either. We didn't give a crap, because we're just like, this is for English speakers. Unless you're completely fluent in Japanese, you're not really going to know the difference. And we had a whole bunch of... There's the Jones shot. I love that shot. I love Brad's shit-eating grin, too. We had a bunch of weebos just descend on Mars Girl, just like, that's not, the accent is wrong, just stop. There was one guy in particular who said, just stop, I can't even believe we're doing this. If this is going on throughout the rest of me, I'm not even gonna watch it. It's not gonna, meh. Like, just having a heart attack over this. And what kills me is that I watch Japanese cinema, and I watch a ton of anime, and I love it, and you cannot find me a Japanese native who speaks perfect English. Like, it's awful. Just awful. And I personally don't care. It's like, it's cute, we can laugh at it, oh, English, ha ha ha. I don't hunt these Japanese actors down and be like, why are you even trying? Just stop, it's not right. And she got all of this flack when we just told her that we didn't care, just, you know, make it Japanese enough so that it's grammatically correct. And she did that. I have people who speak Japanese who are just like, the grammar's fine. She's passed all of her Japanese language tests. She's been to Tokyo. She could teach if she wanted to. But everybody on the internet decided they were suddenly experts in the Japanese language, and she schooled, like, a couple people hardcore. Like, she's just like, well, I could have gone with this and that, but I thought that technically this wouldn't be as correct, you know, so I went more with the higher end grammar instead of making it more colloquial, because there's different sort of versions of Japanese depending on who you're speaking to. You have more of these sort of honorifics, and like, literally, it stopped. Everybody just backed off, and they learned really quickly, do not pick on Mars Girl about Japanese, because she will own you. And that stopped it, but, like, I felt bad, because you got all this flack from people who are, like, in their basements and have no clue. You know, while meanwhile, all of these Japanese actors don't speak English, you know, correctly at all, and they don't care. You know, and neither should you. This is, just like that's intended for Japanese audiences, this is intended for English, so who cares? Jew Wario, that the only thing that bothers me about that shot is we have these flowers in the background as decoration just in our house in general, and we didn't move them, and it's distracting, and I don't know why, but I'm sorry to say, ladies, that's not his real Bowie there. That's was a zucchini or a cucumber or something. And people, he would take it out of his pants, and then the girls would play with it. It was like, it was a lot of fun. I guess for them. This scene, I believe, was the third day, the same scene we did the battle, and it's cold this morning. But the weather was cooperating just now. Now it's sunny. No continuity because we had to shoot these scenes later. I was hoping stuff could be color corrected. Doug didn't have time to do it or didn't feel it was necessary. So there's sunlight in some scenes, there's some not. It's green in some scenes, and others it's not. But I think the movie holds up well enough till about this point, and after here I think is where some of the flaws, the disasters we had on set, and just inherent problems I think in the script start to show. Here though I think it's going pretty good. I added this. Doug just has a couple rambling lines, so I added the whole bit about like, how's bondage going to help us? Because I don't think Doug knew where to go with the scene. But oh, I guess that's later. First we have Bargo. I don't know whose idea it was with the contact lens. I want to say it was probably Doug's, but we kept coming up with things Bargo could do that he somehow solves, giving him these pointless quests. The interesting thing about Doug is I've come to the conclusion on this film, watching how he works. Every person has the thing they gravitate towards and they do really well. Doug is slapstick. I cannot take that away from him, and I can never come up with good slapstick. Only rarely can I come up with something that's slapsticky and funny. Doug just does that naturally, and knows how to film it, knows how to edit it, knows how to make it funny, I think, for the most part. He's not as good at dialogue, and what ended up happening is the way the script went down, and this is where the frustration came with collaborating, is Doug wrote the whole script and then gave it to me. And anybody who does writing out there or collaborates realizes this is insanely difficult. You cannot fix a whole script. You have to be there from the beginning. And he dumps this script on me. He's like, okay, here, like, put in your input. But what I discovered was all of the things I thought were solved and I thought that we had agreed upon, it turns out we're not. It turns out that all of my ideas Doug dumped. Pretty much dumped them wholesale. And Doug... Actually, I do want to talk about this scene briefly. This was one of those white-knuckle shots. We had zero time. I believe this was one take, maybe two tops, and we had to get it right. So this is white-knuckle filmmaking. I'm just following them, trying to copy the Lord of the Rings trailer, except for Linkara. Watch. Whoop! Oh, now I'm going this way. Then Joe, is he going that? No, I'm going this way. Linkara still comments on that. He's like, I thought we were going the other way. I thought it was the split, but... Spoonie, I told him to do that, grab your hat like Gandalf did in the trailer. But so that's the one mistake in there. We just had to leave it, but I still think it's pulled off. And there's this brilliant moment. Spoonie's hat fell off, and I'm just thinking, keep filming, keep filming. Do what I think you're going to do. Spoonie runs back and grabs him like, perfect. And Doug's like, we can't use that shot. I'm like, no, I can. I got the whole thing. We'll make it just part of the movie. And so it's almost like it was written, but it actually was just a total happy accident. I think it's hilarious. So we even did another take where it falls off on purpose, but it wasn't even as funny. That one shot was the better one. Doug did these Sam Raimi shots, and I think they're brilliant. Doug and I both have a love of the Sam Ramocam, as we call it, these Evil Dead Dutch angle shots and shots of the woods. He did the cloaks, too, and these shots, which were really spectacular. But yeah, so Doug hands me the script, and he remembers it differently, and he's half correct. He says, well, I came down, you know, when we were just playing on the PS3 once in a while, and I would run things by you, and you said fine, and he did, but the thought did not occur to me as I was saying yes, that this came at the expense of all the things I had come up with. That was my big mistake. I wasn't thinking, oh, well, if he does that, we're not doing this. I thought these were things he was coming up with on the side. So it was a complete surprise when I read this finished script or this even half-completed script, that none of what I wanted was in there, and the plot was completely 100% different. And it's really difficult. Like, if you collaborate, it is so hard to do that from behind the eight ball. And so right from the get-go, we were just butting heads, because I'm like, you know, there are problems with the script. In all fairness to Doug, he writes these things fast. He does a very good job of getting it out, but the script he handed me was a total mess. Besides the usual spelling errors and stuff, it was like some scenes just died, some scenes went on, so... What happened was, instead of collaborating with him, I ended up becoming a ghostwriter and literally was just retooling scenes to try to make them work. And it was really, really difficult, because sometimes I would just get into these, like, knockdown matches with him. Like, no, we need to change this. I was like, no, I'm not changing this. I'm not changing that. You know... The problem is, what happens is, I'm not actually taking anything out then, I'm only adding, because there was little comedy in some scenes. I was just like, you need some funny lines here or there. So what was an already overlong script ended up being 3 pages longer by the end of it, because I was able to take some things out, but not much. And then I was adding little lines to try to give some scenes punch. So we already had a script that was way too long that just got longer because Doug didn't want to lose any scenes. He was debating about losing some of them, but he never really did lose them, so and it made for a really frustrating writing session. I said it was the worst collaboration I've ever done. I do that with no bitterness towards Doug, because I legitimately really enjoy working with Doug. But you have projects that are really good to work on, you have projects that are bad, and this was just a bad one. We just had trouble the whole way through it, right down to the filming. The one line I wanted to throw in, because we were supposed to shoot on these trails, but it rained and they were now a pond, which you may be able to see in the background there. That's supposed to be dirt back there. It's now a pond. I wanted to write "Follow the Yellow Line Road" or something. I don't know if that made it into the final script, but I wanted to give some reason why they're on a bike trail in this forest preserve. Lindsay was really obsessed with the fact that everybody's too mean to each other, and I agreed with her to a small extent. So I changed a couple lines. Originally, Bennett's line was, "Look, yonder douchebags." I changed it to "yonder nerdlings," which I thought was funnier. Some lines I thought were funny. I kept them in. You know, "We should kick them in the nads." That was an addition I made, and I guess just Lindsay and I have different points of view. Mine is that these are all critics. They're snarky. They don't really like Doug. He's always putting them on this quest. They're cold outside. They don't know what they're doing. To me, it made sense that they would all be cranky. And for me, all good comedy comes from misery. Doug and I really adhere to that rule that all good comedy comes from miserable things happening to people and how they react to it. You don't enjoy watching people having a great time and, oh, this is fun and that's not comedy. You know, that's a drama or that's a children's film. Comedy comes from people being mean, people backstabbing, bad things happening to good people. That's the source of all comedy. Like, that's what makes people laugh is, you know, and pointing out things and griping and making fun of things. Lindsay was just like, we're too mean. I don't like it. And I toned back the script a little because I think she had I think she was 50% right on that, but we definitely left a lot in. The cat. I wrote some of this dialogue, punched it up a little. I think this is very Python inspired with the rabbit. I actually quoted Python. I added that in about, you know, "This cat's dynamite. Mustn't risk another frontal assault." The idea came from an unused idea I had from the Bjork show 3, which we never filmed, but the plot in that was that there's some stalker stalking Bjork, and it turns out it's one of the puppeteers on her Pee-wee's Playhouse style show. The puppeteer gets into a fight with one of the guests, and he was actually going to be played by Dave, who does his puppeteer role here. And the joke was, just like that shot there, the puppeteer was going to be a globe, like a Globey from Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and the whole puppeteer breaks the fourth wall and gets up and fights with the guest with this globe on his head. And Doug liked the idea so much, we decided to incorporate it into this. That's a very Sam Raimi shot. I was aping the devil that chases Bruce Campbell in the woods. These were sort of fun to film. I think the slapstick here works pretty well. And this is Doug. Doug does this very well. He just tells me, he's like, "Hey, here's the shots I want, do it." This day, though, this is the only thing that kind of weirded me out. I was like, I love that shot. That's a great reaction shot from the cat. But then he just punches him. We didn't have an out for that. I love that shot, too, just being held back by the puppet. This day was the worst day of shooting. And this is where the chinks in the armor started to show up. Doug didn't realize the Forest Preserve didn't open until later. We told the producers to dress for cold. Benzai shows up without any pants. He could have been wearing warm clothes in between takes. He didn't. A couple of the producers that didn't dress warm were very kind of cranky and getting beaten up by the cold. So was Doug, because he didn't have any pants. He was in the tights all the time. Or not even the tights, it was just his white pasty legs. This, by the way, I think Lindsay did brilliantly. She was concerned it wasn't going to be funny, and because she's just green screening all this, so she has no idea. When she saw the final cut, she's like, okay, this is hilarious. And she knows, like, token bits of, like, 8 separate languages, so she's just, like, swearing in Hindi and Bengali and all of these different languages and making stuff up. And she did it great, and I believe that was her idea, too. Just like, we should do montages. Lord of the Rings always does that. I think her and Doug were Skyping about it. And so we wrote that in. I thought it was a brilliant satire of the Lord of the Rings films. This, I was joking when I filmed. I was like, I feel like I'm on CSI. This looks like a crime scene, or we're filming some exploitation movie. This is Allison laying there on the ground. I love that shot too. Everybody hovering over her. I had a fun time framing that. I think I also wrote the line in there about, "Don't you dare touch her. That's my job." I tried to add funny lines in as I could to try to give scene punches. I love her reaction here. Doug was adamant. He's like, because I wrote that in at the last second, and Doug's like, we're totally doing that. Doug loved that line. It's funny because it's not me, because it so obviously is him. And Doug's like, we're totally keeping that line in. So it was one of the few Doug definitely did not cut. We had to have the one Link reference. But this day was the worst, and this is where I started having a breakdown, because as I'm filming this, I always joked about how can people on the set of Batman and Robin or these awful movies, Battlefield Earth, not realize they're making a bad movie? Didn't a cameraman or somebody sit there and say, this is awful, this is no good? And I sat there filming all of these scenes, not laughing once, not even cracking much of a smile, and like I suddenly panicked and I thought, holy shit. I'm the douchebag on set who realizes this is not funny, and I'm sitting here just quietly filming it and going, oh my god. And Doug slowly came to that conclusion by the end of the day as well, and started to panic as well, because to be fair, the scenes with Team 1 are not as funny, and we both were flipping out, like, what are we gonna do? Like, we're filming this, and it's not making us laugh. It's cold outside, the producers are just completely destroyed by the cold. So this is where the chinks in the armor started to happen. This scene, this may have been a writing fail on my part. I thought this scene played much funnier in the script, and once I saw it filmed, it was not as funny. I didn't film it. I believe this was Ed and Doug. I had to go back to base camp for something. I would have had it play out a bit differently, but I'm not sure that would have saved it, and they deliver it great. They're going by Doug's instructions, and Doug didn't know how to do it because I wrote the scene, so I don't fault him at all. But I think like it just played funnier in my head, and when I said it, I was like, you know what, this may just be just a lowbrow penis joke that doesn't work, which was the irony about this script. Is normally I try to make things highbrow, and I ended up in this script actually inserting the lowbrow jokes normally where Doug would, because Doug was all about making it more epic without as much comedy early on. But the original draft just had Film Brain saying, you are a P. And it just ended there. And I'm like, Doug, where are you going with this? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, that's it? End scene? He's like, I guess. And I wrote the whole exchange, and Doug really liked it. And I don't know what it is. It just didn't play as well, and maybe I just didn't write it as well as I thought. Or I thought maybe there were some lines cut. There was a better build-up. Doug insists he went with the whole script, so I believe him. This scene, I think, was great. Brad does a pitch-perfect Harrison Ford. Actually, what spawned this is Brad and I quote Indiana Jones all the time, and his Ford is great. And I remember when we were coming up with costume ideas, I emailed Brad and I said, you're playing Indiana Jones in the next film. You have no choice. There will be no arguments. You're just doing it. And Brad simply replies, right on. He's like, that's awesome. Totally. And that was it. He just came as Indiana Jones. And the one weird thing is Doug actually had no Indiana Jones references. He had two, which were brilliant. But as a whole, no Indiana Jones lines, no nothing. And later he said, like, oh, God, I love that scene. That's a throwback to, like, the Zucker Brothers films and Hot Shots. Just simple slapstick. Makes Doug and I laugh all the time. Might be our favorite little throwaway scene. There were no lines for Brad, so I spent most of my time with Brad's character because Doug handed me the whole script again, so I would look at these scenes with Brad, and I started just inserting Indiana Jones lines, anything I could come up with. There were a couple that I think fans pointed out that I missed. They said in the intro, and Doug and I were both kicking ourselves, when they go to the house later, that Brad should have said, we're here to view the tapestries from Last Crusade, and we were just like, oh, why didn't we do that? But I think we got enough in there, though. The cloaks, Brian Hines is doing center cloak. He was brilliant, and he was upset because we didn't show his face. Like, oh, you're trying to hide me, hun. I had to explain to him that we're huge fans of The Tick. And in The Tick and in Red vs. Blue, you have characters in costumes and you can't see their faces, and it gives them a sense of credibility that is completely destroyed by how asinine they act. I love seeing people dressed seriously acting like total fools, and the ninjas and the Tick and Red versus Blue, the Halo armor, it just makes those scenes, and he did this pitch perfectly. I think it makes it much funnier this way. Oh, this actually was a holdover. Like, the only thing I think made it through all of the drafts that I had, like, basically come up with in all of my ideas, because in the original idea I had, Spoonie goes all mazes and monsters. He becomes like Tom Hanks's character, and literally just like believes it's all real. And early on, I had a scene like this where he's taking the LARP way too seriously, and he goes up against these characters and throws the birdseed or whatever. And it made it through all of the drafts. I'm really happy because I think this scene is funny, and I wrote it, and I had participated, actually not participated, I watched a couple of LARPs that did the birdseed thing, and my ex-girlfriend was really into it, so I sat in on a couple of them watching. I always remembered it. I said, we got to use this somewhere. So I wrote that scene, remembering what little I did from those two experiences, and I told Spoonie, I'm like, ad-lib it, because I had it all written up. I'm just like, I may be wrong, do what you want, ad-lib it so it makes sense, so it's more LARP-like. Spoonie is great at ad-libbing, and he did this whole thing. He got the gist of what I wanted and stuck to the like bullet points, the talking points of the script, and made a lot of this other stuff up. And it just kills me. I love the way he hands the staff to Iron Liz there playing one of the cloaks, and I love the way he just breaks the fourth wall. This scene just played exactly like I wanted to in the script, and I love improvisation. Ghostbusters, if you read the original Ghostbusters script, it's completely different because the 4 SNL alumni on there made so much stuff up on set, and I love it when that happens, I complain about losing plot points to Doug, but I'd much rather have happy accidents and improv happen on set, and that really worked, and I really enjoyed this scene because of it. And again, we made a running joke with his hat falling off, because it fell off naturally with all the wind in Chicago. And this running joke, I think, worked. I think it could have gotten tired fast, and but I think it was just funny to hear the different things. You kill my lawyer, you kill my hamster. Originally, we were just going through relatives, but we decided to make it even more obscure. A lot of these effects, I don't know which was done by who. Phalis did a lot of them. Apollo Z Hack did some early on, but Apollo Z Hack strangely left the site, so he... I still don't know why, but I'm very grateful to the work he did on this, and but he up and vanished for some reason. So yeah, he did some great effects though. Great shot by Doug. Doug edited that flawlessly. I love just Orlando sitting there. But yeah, so this Team 1 stuff just never gelled, and this, I think, was a source of a lot of arguments between Doug and I, because particularly with, I like the scene where they teach Doug how to be more ladylike. I think it went on too long, but I think the comedy is there, and it's kind of funny. But most of these scenes, we would get into arguments because Doug was very keen on, I actually do want to mention... For the some of the shots I did, these are some of my favorite. I tried to frame it as interestingly as possible for just a sort of throwaway dialogue scene. But for these scenes, Doug and I would have these arguments because he was very keen on. He's like, I want there to be a mystery. I want there like there's a mystery around Malachi. There's a mystery around that, and we just came from differing point of views because I said, okay, well then you need to write it as a mystery. The way a mystery works is you reveal clues and you reveal things as the plot goes, and from my point of view, it sounds like Star Wars. From my point of view, the Jedi are evil. From my point of view, you need to do this throughout the script, and Doug's approach to this was, well, I'm just going to reveal this all in the beginning of the third act, and I'm like, I don't think this is. I don't think this is going to work. Like, you're not going to keep audience interest in the middle part of this film. And I think it hit ahead, I think, in particular with the witch scene, because there's some comedy here, at least I think, carrying it. The witch scene, we had a long conversation. We were going to a convention in Ohio, and we hopped on this little business jet, and I was reading the script. I was like, Doug, you realize with this witch scene, there's no point to it. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, nothing happens. He's like, sure, something happens. I'm like, what? He's like, there's an obstacle, and they encounter it. I'm like, yeah, but you've done that 3 times already. We have 3 obstacles in a row. Oh my God. Doug, that was the hardest scene to shoot, I can say right now. I basically was bleaching my eyes out for a week. For those of you that, have to poke your eyes out, or I will have you know that I told Doug I didn't think that was a good idea. I was just like, I don't want to shoot this. I don't need to see this, and I'm family. And he wanted to go Will Ferrell, though, and show it all. And Doug, I give Doug credit, he has no shame. Sometimes maybe he should, but he doesn't. And he... so we shot that scene, and I'm just like, oh, I feel like I'm shooting a porno. He's like, this is so wrong. I hear John Borman directed his daughter in a sex scene in Excalibur or something. I was like, what must have that been like? And I was like, I think I just experienced it. So I actually wanted to put like that guy with the glasses logo, Doug's face, and the Looney Tunes logo as a censor sort of like black bar over it, but Doug wanted to reveal it all. So, but we had this long conversation. I said, nothing's revealed though. He's like, but that's the mystery. I was like, you can't have a mystery where nothing's revealed. A mystery, you do have to reveal things. That's how mystery works. He's like, no, the mystery is nothing's revealed. It's just a mystery, and like that will keep the audience going. What's happening? I was like, well, that's just a tease, though. You're simply like dragging them through this middle part of the movie until you dump it all at once in the beginning of the 3rd act, and he would not relent. I fought desperately for the occasional throwaway line here or there to reveal something. The chain letter was my idea, and I'm not saying it's great. I don't think it is. I think it's weird. I think it's ham-handed the way I wrote it, but it's like I was just trying to give something for the audience to chew on a bit, to, just be like, oh, something else is revealed. I could be completely wrong about this. The audience may have just bought this hook, line, and sinker, and my idea may have completely bombed this movie. I mean, we'll never know because it was never filmed that way. I could be 100% wrong. That was my point of view going into this, and that was the source of a lot of problems, was trying to get through these scenes, and particularly when we were filming them, I think Doug started to sense it too. He's like, yeah, it may not be that funny, I don't know. We also had the problem with all of the weather disasters with the rain. A lot of lines, Doug was huge on this whole magic versus technology thing, and he had more lines in there, but I still felt that as a plot device it was an afterthought, particularly because so much of it only comes in later without it being played up earlier. But so some of those scenes about magic versus technology got cut because we ran out of time shooting on this first day. Not right here, actually. This is weeks after because it's sunny out. But we did this alone, Bargo, Doug, and I. And again, I ended up writing the low blow joke of the goat porn, which I'm not sure Mickey was pleased with, but I was just trying to insert some sort of comedy no matter how desperate. Because we didn't have much other comedy, and I think Doug was resistant at first, but the irony of it was, because of all the disasters, Doug's like, okay, we can't do this epic movie. We have to do this as a straight shot comedy, which is not what he wanted, but that's what we ended up having to go with because the production and all of the disasters forced us into it. So Doug was kind of later was just like, thank God we kind of went for, some of these jokes and things because we would have had nothing really to film. And we would have lost these more key scenes that are more about the plot and about these other things, which Doug had wanted and we had to lose, so... And, this is another scene. The weird thing about these scenes is that I had this argument because I talked to Doug about, I think it was Fantasia 2000, how I didn't like that movie very much. And I said, individually, every animated short in that film is great. As a whole, it doesn't work. they become sort of redundant on top of each other. The music selections were all the same, and I think that's the situation here for me. Individually, I think a lot of these scenes are funny. I love the puppeteer thing. The witch scene isn't hilarious, but I think there are funny bits. I love this scene. I think the scene is very funny. Individually, I think they work. And when I saw them individually, I thought they were great. It was only when I watched it as a whole that I was like, it sort of just goes on. And it's just like, they're great scenes that I think we put together, but it somehow doesn't gel as a whole, which is a problem we see in the movies we review. And I can admit that. You know, Doug and I review films all the time, and it doesn't mean we're gods. That doesn't mean we don't do perfect work. So these are some of the flaws inherent in the script. That said, I think the Team 2 stuff came out great, and I feel really guilty and bad, and I think Doug did a little too, about the players on Team 1. Not only did they get the worst day to film, because it was so cold out, and for Team 2 it was much easier, I love that shot. They also had, I think, the lesser scenes, and I feel bad. Like, we didn't do that on purpose, and I feel bad we couldn't give them more to chew on. And that's a regret I have, because, like, I think these are the standout scenes with Team 2 here, and I think part of it was we put some of the funnier costumes together. We gave them better villains to chew on with the cloaks. We had Luke and Film Brain fighting. I think it gelled so much better with this team, and this was one of my favorite shots that I had to do, was this pan across. And it's the inherent problem of having too many people on set. Everybody wants to see their favorite producer, and we kind of kowtow to that, and we can't get around it. We get so much flack if we don't invite so many people, so we try to satisfy everybody, but this is the price we pay. So audience members is just like, it goes on to there's too many people. Well, if we didn't invite the guy or gal you liked, then you'd be like giving us hell. So this is the price of doing that, and my original concept was, at first I thought we could throw them all on one team, and that would work better. Doug thought it was impossible, and I don't disagree with him. But when you divide it up like that, then we have this problem of one team gets all these juicy scenes, and the other gets, in some ways, I think Doug intended it to be more plot, but the way it ended up written was not as much plot as I think he thought it was. And on top of that, some of the plot scenes got cut. Doug shot that scene and did a brilliant job. He thinks he can't film, and I don't get it. I was like, Doug, you handled a lot of these action scenes great, because Doug became an assistant DP for the final day of shooting because he doesn't have to be on camera here. But he does a wonderful job. I don't think he gives himself enough credit. I love the playground stuff. I love the ridiculousness of it. I wish I had so many better scenes, like, mapped out in my head. I had these long tracking shots. We ran out of time. I couldn't do them, so it's very jump cutty. This scene, I give Doug all the credit. He came up with it, and I'm jealous. I am fucking jealous, and I wanted to write a scene like this. I didn't come up with it. He did. I think it's brilliant. I'm like, Doug, I want that scene. I want to say I came up with that, and I can't. You know, all kudos to Doug on that. And I think it's one of the funniest scenes in the movie. I want to say maybe I came up with the slide scene, but I can't remember entirely. But that's a really funny scene, too. I did have one scene I came up with that we shot but got cut, and it was Brad and Joe on these little horsies, like, and the cloaks running behind them, and they're like, they're gaining on us, and of course they're on horses and they're not moving anywhere. It looked good in my head. It sucked when we filmed it, and Doug was right to cut it. I remember Wario kept dropping that ball. That was a hard shot to do. I should also mention that on this day, Ed was also helping to film a lot of scenes. He became indispensable. But I'll probably get into that later. I love this scene. We just went for full-out satire of Last Crusade. The funny thing is, poor Mars Girl had like a wardrobe malfunction. I remember sitting there in the living room at one point, just not paying attention much to anything, just glancing around, and all of a sudden, like, I can see all the way up to Mars Girl's, like, hips. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I mean, you could practically see everything. And I'm like, so I turned away, but, like, I was like, what the heck happened? And somebody said that her skirt had, like, ripped. And so she had, like, put it together with, like, paper clips or something as a quick fix, and they were able to fix it. But in that scene, the skirt kept riding up as she goes down the slide, and she's like, okay, nobody look. She's like, I'm wearing underpants, I swear, but nobody look. And we had to do a closed set. And I felt bad for her because that slide was cold and wet. It had rained the day before, so I'm like shooting this as professionally as possible. I'm like trying to get her only from the waist up as she goes down the slide. I wanted to do a whole shot showing her go all the way down, but like I framed it so you couldn't see below because this kept happening. I felt really bad for her. But we got through the shot and it was all right, and nobody saw anything because they're like, clear the set! I love this scene. It breaks one of the cardinal rules of... oh, I do have to comment. This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Just the girl playing, like, in the silence. Just total silence. She's like, wee! And the ridiculousness of it in Bradwell. This is embarrassing. I love that scene. It breaks one of the cardinal rules of, we always hate it when girls that are like, you know, prepubescent or like, obviously like 11 or 12 or something are called little girls in movies, but we did it anyway. But the payoff is that Joe's like, she's too old to be on a playground. She's too old to believe in Santa Claus. So we felt we got around that because I believe Jory's daughter is older than like a little girl. She's not 5 or anything. I love that scene too. Brian delivers it, and I love the payoff here. And Jory gave such a great performance. They're friends of ours. We use their house later when we do the home invasion scene. And she just looks so pissed. Just, I want to know! Love that shot of Doug's. I think I had an ad-lib line of just like, you know, what kind of half-baked wizard do you take me for? Do you really want me to answer that? No. So this day, I think killed everybody, and we thought we were going to have a mutiny. And that's when the film started to fall apart because Doug was destroyed, and Linkara, of all people, has the craziest work ethic. He will plow through anything without saying a word. He's the one who's always like, come on, troops, let's go, let's do it. He folded like a lawn chair. I mean, like a house of cards. And that's when I flipped out. It's like, if you've lost Walter Cronkite, you've lost the nation. If you've lost Linkara and he is the hardest worker you have, the most dedicated, nothing phases him, we're in trouble because the other producers are not far behind, or they're well ahead of him on that. So we came out of this day of shooting destroyed. We lost so many scenes. We were well behind. We knew the next 3 days it was going to rain. Doug, everybody just was destroyed. Linkara was just very upset. I don't know if it was the weather or what was going on, but we're like, if Linkara is this way, then we're in trouble. Because if you destroy Linkara, then he's the best guy we've got at this. So Doug slept all of Wednesday. And he woke up and he's like, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. I think the producers are going to mutiny. I think they're upset. I think they're cold and tired. We're going to have nothing but rain. We've cut so many scenes. He's like, this is a disaster. So I should note, I think this is where Lindsay was like, we're all so mean. But I think the payoff is that she completely takes Doug out, Evil Dead style. Like, that's the payout. And this... I gave Doug the direction. This is one of the few times I directed it. I'm like, scream like Bruce Campbell. There's a scene, I think, where the rotten apple head comes out at the end of Evil Dead 2, and Bruce Campbell screams and his head turns like white. He gets a streak of white in his hair. He's like, do that, scream. So Doug just does this final, yeah, right there, just, ah! I think the payoff was great with the mace, even though I don't think we made it clear enough that it was mace. And we gave her the direction. We said we wanted it like Ellen DeGeneres, really ineffectual, really non-threatening, just like, hi, how's it going? So I think she gives a great performance. My problem isn't with her at all. It's with the way we wrote the scene. But this was a difficult scene. We nearly cut it originally because I said it was pointless, and Doug started to agree with me. Then we turned it into a zombie, which I don't know what I was thinking with that, but I think I was trying to play up the stereotype of the slow zombie, because the zombie, it turns out, is insanely fast. We didn't like that either. Doug's like, we'll just go back to a witch. I still said it was pointless. But we tried to punch it up a bit. I mean, the only thing that comes out of this, I think that's great, is Phalis it sets up the Phalos, my little friend scene, and I think the payoff with Tom's pretty good. Doug and I did have a minor disagreement. I wanted her to revert back to her normal voice when Tom sprays her and just go, "Ow, you bunghole!" Like, really pathetic. I thought there's where the comedy would come from. Doug kept the demon voice in the whole way through. But, I don't know which would have been better. That's just a personal choice, but... The funny thing is, as much as I didn't think the scene worked that well, I loved filming it. I think it's some of the better film stuff I did. I've got a lot of sloppy Dutch angle shots, and a lot of scenes were so white-knuckle, I think they're awful, but that I could take my time on a little more, and I think it came out good. I tried to use the forest and get some interesting shots, but this scene was like cut in half. There was supposed to be more of a line about magic versus technology or something, and we wrote that in, and the whole scene with her talking about the chain letter I wrote in as a... basically as a half-assed attempt to try to give the scene some point. My concept is that Malachite sent out the chain letter. She's aware that Malachite did this. She knows that Malachite is chasing them. So it was supposed to give that hint away, but I don't think it's much of a plot point to chew on. I wanted way more, but Doug's like, keep the mystery, and by that, don't reveal anything. So I had to fight really long for that line, which I don't like anyway, but, you know, what can you do? So... Doug shot this scene. That's Doug's ex-girlfriend, actually. They had dated for a very long time, are still on friendly terms, and we used to film with her a lot in high school and college, and she's a lot of fun, and people may recognize her from some old stuff Doug did that he aired on the site. So she was able to come in and give a great performance. It was fun to actually see her again. We actually caught up afterwards for coffee, and... It's funny because in the old days we said she looked like Kirsten Dunst, particularly when Spider-Man 1 came out, and everybody says that on the site now. It's just like, who's the chick that looks like Kirsten Dunst? So she still has that look about her. It was fun watching this scene play out. And I actually like this scene. I think this scene really, really works. I don't have a problem with all the technological monologues. I just think that we could have done more in other places, but this scene was pitch perfect. And I think it serves the plot. He picks up the map, he's later going to hand the map, so it advances the story there. And it's not an incredibly long scene, so I think it flows well. The thing about Orlando's voice, I thought Doug was going to dub it. Orlando, I think, is a great actor. He's one of our best, I think, that we've got. He always turns in a good performance. We used him for a Christmas special. I imagine Malachite's voice a little deeper. Orlando doesn't have a deep voice. It's not a fault of his own. Doug didn't dub it. I'm not sure if that would have been better or not. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's different from what I imagine, but, you know, Orlando acts it out very well, and he sells it with his look, so it's a bit of a moot point, just an interesting, I don't know, like curio or something. Oh my god, this scene. So, we lost a couple of good scenes. One was, there was a scene where Luke basically is insulting Film Brain, and he goes inside his head, and his two personalities from his reviews talk to him. And they're just like, you know, what should we do? Insult his food. Yeah, British food tastes awful. Let's do that. And it was a great scene. Luke got sick. He got a flu really bad, so we lost that. And the weird thing about this scene is, I wrote it with the concept that when they pick up this rock, which I never liked as a plot point, but Doug's like, no, it has to be the rock. I'm like, okay. So, but whatever it was that gets them into the gate cleaner's realm, they were supposed to go into the realm with the gate cleaner. And it was supposed to be, I thought we were going to green screen it or put them in front of a black screen whenever they talked to him. Doug shot it all out in the forest, and I'm not sure it makes any sense. I think the scene still works, but... And they were supposed to pop back out of it and ask the other guys. There was a line or two that got dropped, and then... I'm not sure that the scene works as well. It's very weird, the way it was shot. But... I don't know. I think it's another scene that, as far as my writing goes, I think it may have worked a little better on paper, but we just really wanted to do something with the gate cleaner. We wanted another obstacle, and I thought, well, the gate cleaner is fantasy. And we also had this great scene where Luke's talking to his mother, and I love the line, no, I'm not going to bring back another dead animal. I think that was improvised, by the way, and it's a great line out of Luke. So, but getting getting back to that Wednesday, Doug's like, I think we're sunk. I don't know what we're gonna do. So we called an emergency meeting with Mashad, and we talked to him. And Holly was supposed to be there, but couldn't get there for some reason. It was like an hour and a half late. So we're forced to make these decisions without Holly's input. And Doug's like, the producers are going to revolt. They all look destroyed. I'm not going to do this to them. Mashad was really big on, I'm not going to make them work on Easter. That's the only way to get around this with the weather. If that even cooperates, it looked like it was going to rain for days in a row. What do? We were debating about doing a Lost in La Mancha style mockumentary or documentary like about the Terry Gilliam film where he did Don Quixote. And just be honest with the audience, here's what we were going to do. This is how it fell apart. Make something interesting out of that. We just felt destroyed, and we just voted, and we're like, okay, we're not going to kill our producers to do this. This isn't going to happen. We go home, and we tell the producers we're going to have a meeting. Holly finally gets in touch with me. I explained to her what's going on, and she is adamant. She's just like, I am pissed. You know, I'm an executive in this company, so I'm like, okay, explain. Like, I'm willing to hear her out. I want her input bad. I'm like, okay, explain. She's like, I'll tell you when I get there. Give me 10 minutes. I'm on my way. She shows up and she says that far from being destroyed, the producers are okay, and that they think this is an easier shoot than Molossia was, than Kick-Assia. They think this is way easier than Reno. There are problems, but they're totally just like that. You know, this is nowhere near as bad as that. She's like, they're going to be pissed if you stop this. So once I get this information, I'm like, oh, crap. We're about ready to have an emergency meeting with the producers to tell them we're going to scrap the project. I'm like, okay, so I call up Mashad and Bargo, who are going to the hotel. I'm like, just stall. I have like a few minutes to try to talk to Doug. I go to Doug, and this becomes a very strange and interesting game of let's convince Doug to make a movie. Doug, and I don't fault him for this, I honestly think Doug was having a bit of a nervous breakdown, and he's like, no, we're not doing this. No, this production's over. This isn't happening. We can't do this. He was really big and obsessed with it. I'm not putting out an inferior product, and this is just going to be half-assed at this point, even for us, because everything we do is kind of half-assed. But, I'm not going to do that to our audience. I'm not going to make the producers work any harder. I honestly think he was having a bit of a meltdown, and the stress had just killed him. And I don't blame him. I don't fault him in the least, because to be honest, I had a meltdown, only it was a delayed reaction. I had it 2 days later, and I'll go into that later. But so Doug having a breakdown, I completely understood, but then it's just like, well, now what do I do? I had 45 minutes tops to convince Doug that this project was a go. And I can't do it without him. I can't do it without him giving his blessing, agreeing to do it. And I can't do it without him being able to tell me that he thinks it can get done. So I kept pressing him. I'm just like, Doug, can this film be finished? He's like, I don't think so. He's like, we've lost all these days to rain. We can't physically do it in the time. And I was like, that's finally when I laid the idea down. I was like, fine, we need to collaborate. Enough of this, you're handling all 8 billion things. We can't micromanage this anymore. It's worked for you in the past. It's not working now. And that's where Doug slowly over the course of 40 minutes grew up. And I don't mean that Doug's not an adult, but I mean as a director, I give him all the credit. He literally had a moment where he could have sunk or swam, and he fucking swam. He finally came around. It was begrudgingly, but he slowly saw, he's like, okay, I will relinquish control of all sorts of things. We will bring people in to assist. We will do this left and right, and we'll do it. And he matured in 40 minutes more than I think a lot of Hollywood directors do in 20 years. And I give him all that credit. That is something I can never take away with him. And that it was the most proud moment as his brother and as a collaborator, as an executive in this company. I'm like, finally, it's 2 years into this, and he's become a real filmmaker. He's just this filmmaking needs to be a collaborative process. So he basically, he committed to it. He's like, you're right, we're going to do this. He had a Linkara moment. He's like, I am a man. We will do this. And I think the other turning point was Holly's just like, I just checked the weather. We're going to have a break. It may not work, but we may as well shoot it anyway. And if we have a disaster, we have a disaster. We went down fighting. You know, I told Doug, I gave the analogy of the Titanic. I was like, Doug, we go down with the ship. We are the captain on the bridge. If we go down with the ship, we go down with the ship, but we go down with it. We film it, and if it doesn't work, we can make a documentary of how it didn't work then. But at least we should get the shots. You know, it doesn't make sense not to do it. And Doug's like, you're right. We go to the hotel. And Doug was really keen. The compromise that I think, I want to say I came up with it, maybe Doug as well, but whoever came up with it was, we were still very worried that maybe all the producers weren't on board. So we would put it to a vote, do a secret ballot and put it to a vote and let them vote on whether to continue or not, if they were physically exhausted or not. We went to the hotel and literally Doug's like, this is the situation. I don't want to overwork you guys. These are the problems we're having. We're going to put it to a secret vote. They ripped up the paper. They're like, don't bother. And Linkara gave this Patton-esque speech, like practically with American flag falling behind him. And I think Doug was very proud. And Doug was like, thank you guys so much. And from that moment on, it wasn't a perfect shoot, but we were able to salvage it. And so much of that was because Doug matured so quickly, because Doug was able to grow as a director, and because the staff was so helpful. The crew, Ed Glazer, Lindsay, Linkara, you know, I love this slow motion shot. I don't know what Doug was thinking with this, but it's very amusing. So sad. But because of that, we were able to save it, and because of everyone else's assistance. And so after that, we went into total like red alert mode. I was like, Ed Glazer had a Battlefield promotion. He was now assistant DP, so we had 2 cameras running. We borrowed Pause. Was it Pause or Todd's? I think it was Todd's camera. We borrowed Todd's camera. We both Ed and I were filming simultaneously to get shots out of the way faster. Lindsay was helping me late one night while we were going through the script to try to cut some scenes. You know, Iron Liz, also we had a Battlefield promotion with her because she ended up replacing Ed as one of the cloaks. She turned in a great performance. Basically, the production was saved because of everyone's help, and I am so grateful to that, because I can say definitively that as much as Reno was hell on earth for our producers, this film for the executive staff, for the filmmakers, for Doug and I think for Holly and Michelle and Margaret, all of us involved, this was the most miserable experience of our lives. There is nothing that compared to this shoot. We were destroyed. We were having breakdowns. This was a rudderless ship. Stuff was going wrong. So to have that support from the bottom up instead of, I think it was from the top down in Reno, and this time it was from the bottom up, and to have that was such a godsend. I love this scene. These are the things that Doug inserted in the script that I liked, because it connects the plot elements together. I have no idea what performance this is. I don't act. I dress up in silly costumes and do silly voices because I can't act. I'm a terrible actor. I look at the camera. I have no clue what I'm doing. I grew this beard out just to make my character look more pathetic. And my now wife, she was my fiance at the time. My wife hated it. She was like, the second you shave that thing off, the better. Which is funny because I had other people thinking I should keep it. It was scrappy. I've never grown a full beard before, so I think I end up looking a little like Walter Peck. But shut this down. Shut this all down. The wig was some awful 70s wig that we just dug up. I found my most obnoxious Hawaiian shirt that I own. As a scene, I had a bit of a writing fail here because the whole to this, to that, I think looked better on paper. And I think the biggest thing was, when I wrote the script, I had it in my head that we would flash back to me and Malachite, like sort of talking and at the library and researching things, and something to cut away from all this dialogue. And Doug shoots this and edits this. I was like, well, aren't we going to do the flashback? He's like, there is no flashback. What are you talking about? And I had a jackass moment where I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, once again, you're cutting something of mine. And he's like, check the script. I checked the script. I'm like, oh my god, Doug, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot to write that in. So I completely destroyed the scene because I forgot to put the flashback in. And I think it makes this scene play much slower than it should. There were supposed to be visual cutaways because film should be a visual medium, and this is all slow dialogue based on my jackass performance. The voice itself, a lot of people are like, where did the hell did this voice come from? It's like a combination of every nerdy character I remember from TV. I think some of it is, I think the character was 24. It's the fat minion of the Monarchs from Venture Brothers, who always talks like this, my young Padawan. And there's also, I think, some Rick Moranis from Spaceballs, you know. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? Smoke if you got 'em. There's that wormy nerd from The Simpsons, you know. Please don't leave, sir. If I had a girlfriend, she'd kill me. Oh! So I kind of put together all of these nerdy characters I remember into sort of one super nerd. I'd say the look and some of the dialogue is based on my boss. I work part-time at a chiropractor's office. I'd say at this stage in the game, sort of because extra cash is always nice, and just sort of for fun, I can de-stress a couple days out of the week, but he's a really friendly guy, but he has these like sort of lazy eyes. He has this beard and this very laid back attitude. He's just always like, "Hey, dude, what's happening?" No, bro, that's really good. No, awesome, man, awesome. And that's sort of the way he talks. So I took that manner that he speaks in and then gave it this like soprano nerd voice. Our friend James. Anybody who knows James is just James, and we cast him as the guy who owns the house and simply cast him as James. Like, we didn't change his name, we just made him James, because James is an awesome guy, and that's all he's capable of playing. He's just James. He's like, hi there, how you doing? Book of the Dead is over there, you know. And that's pretty much what he does. The few lines I am proud of, I added these lines about just like, oh, you know, porn, you know, the internet is this, and God, look at that awful acting. This is hard to watch. This is painful. Doug was... I sort of was okay with this. Only the true of heart, and... Because I was trying to find a reason why Jaffers wrote this game, and his sort of, you know, backstory. I'm not really proud of it. I'm not sure it works all that great, but it was a means, at least, to try to explain why they're in costume, try to explain why Jaffers wrote it, because originally this was supposed to be in a dungeon-like setting. The funny thing is the original title of this was going to be Dungeons and Critics. Doug took out all of my ideas about having dungeons or anything like that. He's like, well, we can't do that. It's like, Doug, it's really easy to buy fake castle wallpaper. You can go to Hobby Lobby and pick that up and dress up the set. He's like, no, we can't do that. So he took all dungeons out of it. So this ended up being in a house. And once that happened, we're just like, well, we can't call it Dungeons and Critics because there's critics, but there's no dungeons. So what the hell are we going to call this? Doug's original idea. Oh, I should note that that line is because I had to go like my wife's bridal shower or something. I was doing something with her and I had to leave, and I'm like, Doug, how do we get to the end of the scene faster? There was more dialogue. And I literally walked out jokingly and I just said, how about I just say this? Hey man, thanks for watching The Place I Was Trapped in a Book. And Doug thought it was hilarious. Orlando was there too and he laughed and James laughed. So we literally went with that, and I think it works much funnier, whereas a number of lines of dialogue, you know, I think would have failed. That one line just sums it up. It's like, James doesn't care. He's like, whatever, and I don't care. I'm out of the book grades. It's like, hey, man, thanks for watching The Place. I was trapped in a book for 30 years. And I based that on a line from somewhere, but I forget what line, but I was going off of some line from a movie, but I don't remember what. These scenes, Iron Liz could not keep a straight face. Film Brain was just so funny. Matt turns in such a goofy performance. And again, I love these bits. This is where I think the best comedy comes from. And this is where I think I do a good job and Doug does a great job put together, is coming up with villains that you're supposed to take seriously in theory but are just so pathetic. I mean, them just trying to ditch Film Brain and run away in a car kills me. Just the fact that they have a car and they're just like, screw it, no horses, no nothing, they drive away in a car. And the way they're like I love Jim J. Rez, I think, in the backseat going, go, 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 as Film Brain's just running to catch up with them. I think it's just one of the biggest laughs for me in the film. And this scene came out of one of Doug's brilliant observations. He said in Lord of the Rings it always bothered him that they're always just like, if the knife point works its way to your heart, Frodo, you will become as them. You will become a Black Rider. And Doug's like, how does that work? You're going to have 9 Black Riders and this shrimp at the end of it. Don't you think that's going to harsh their buzz and make them look bad? Can you imagine them riding around with Frodo in, a black outfit? And it was such a great observation by Doug, and Doug worked it in here, and I thought it was great. That line was one of those last-minute additions I added to the script, just like, it's too late, Luke. He's gone to the space between spaces. And Brad liked it so much he cracked up the first time he said it. I had a lot of fun kind of adding some of the lines in this scene, too. And I think that the funny thing is Luke... Mars Girl's laughing there. Luke gives this credibility. I think Luke... some of our actors are good at playing characters and goofballs, and some I think are good at just giving a straight performance. I think Brad is good at giving a straight performance. Jew Wario sort of can. I mean, he's always sort of the Ned Flanders of the bunch, but Luke also is really good at giving a straight-up performance. I think he gives this scene a credibility just because he's not any character in particular. He's just Luke, and I think he totally sold this scene. Just like, I'm gonna do this now, and I'm gonna hypnotize him out of it. I love that moment by Matt. Just like, well, now I would. I think Doug just had the scene end, and I added that line in because it was like, even though he's been saved, Matt's still a bit of a prick about it. But this scene, again, I think I wanted more out of Malachite. My original conception of Malachite was he's like Khan. He was a character who had great power and a lot of pathos behind him because he's just wandering the earth now, completely lost. He's been defeated by technology, and he's forced to deal with these clowns. And I wanted a speech where he says, once I was a god, I was a leader of men, I was a great magician, and now I have nothing, and, I will get it back, or something like that. Doug didn't want any of that. He wanted nothing about Malachite ever revealed, and his cue was No Country for Old Men, the villain in that, and I think it's a great idea, but as I pointed out, he's like, he doesn't talk much, and I'm like, yes, but Doug, you have Malachite talking all the time. I'm not sure it plays as well. He's still giving monologues of just all technological rants, so I tried my best to make these speeches have a little more pathos, and I made them really sort of like have this kind of fake sort of epicness to them, but I kind of did what I could. Doug's speeches, as I said, he's more better at slapstick, so they tended to be rambly, and this scene we came up with simply because I'm just like, Doug, give these scenes purpose. For the love of God, what is the point of this scene? So Doug made it clear, I think we came up with this concept that whenever he uses magic, he loses something. So, and this went back to my original idea that he's sucking souls basically to replenish his magic. But that plot point got nixed, so I don't know if the scene works as well. The scene with James is I just told Doug, I'm just like, that would be James's reaction, just, dude, that's my heart. Like, James wouldn't just fall, he'd just be like, dude, that's my heart, and that would be it. That's just how James would react. But yeah, Malachite, in my opinion, Malachite had this whole backstory that I don't think ever really gets told. It gets told in the animated bit, but it's just a lot of plot delivered very fast. Well done. I mean, it was a beautiful sequence, but it's like, what can you do? So, but he was definitely supposed to have more of a pathos and definitely more of a presence, I think, in the story. Actually, the whole science versus technology thing, Doug's rant here, I think, was great. He came up with a lot of this. And this is one of the few scenes, I don't think I touched that much. I didn't change much about it. I thought he pulled this off well with this whole, what the hell, I hate technology. But the sad part is, it doesn't play as well because we lost some of the earlier scenes where they were talking about it. And in my opinion, we lost the whole science versus nature plot line with the way the plot kind of was fleshed out. It does lead to this great moment. I love this moment where Doug's like, wait a second, duh? And I love that look from Lindsay, by the way, too. She has a real dramatic glare there, just like, huh. And the payoff from Mickey, just, you really are greedy. In my opinion, this is where the film comes back. For as much as I think the middle portions with Team 1 kind of drag, I'm very proud from here on out, I think, of the way most of this went down. And I think the audience reaction bared that out a bit. I think people who were kind of like, meh, as I was reading in the comics, or the comments, some people were kind of like sticking with it. We're like, where are you going with all this? I think at least it pulled itself together in the last third. And from here on out, I'm very proud with how it went. I think it's filmed pretty well. I think, the one thing about Doug that I told him, it was like, because he asked me after the second day of shooting, he's like, well, what do you think? And I told him, I'm like, Doug, don't ask me. I'm like, really, you don't want to know what I think because you changed everything of mine, and human nature is going to be, I'm going to like my vision better. Like, I'm not a moron. I know straight up that this is my point of view, and I was like, you can't use me as an unbiased source for this. I didn't laugh once during all the stuff we shot in the woods. But so much of it is I'm attached to what I wrote, just like you were attached to what you wrote, and you didn't change anything, and we got into arguments. But that's your call. You're the director. You got to the script first, so don't ask me what I think about it. And he was very concerned. He's just like, well, I just don't know if it's going to come out. And the one thing I told him was like, I will tell you this, Doug. I mean, you're growing here as a director, and I'm going to be straight up. Directing is not always your strong point, and he admits that. He doesn't like directing. He's just like, I like getting it when all the stuff is shot and I can put it together. I like the pre-production and I like the post-production. He hates directing. I should say that scene with Suede was another white knuckle shot. This was the last scene we shot, and Doug's like, screw it, we're not doing multiple takes, we're just doing one take. Here, Rob, grab the camera, shoot us both simultaneously and go between the two of us. And I nearly pissed myself. I'm like, you realize we only have one take of this, and I've messed this up. You're stuck with this shot. He's like, just do it. So I'm like shaking my hands, just like going as fast as I can between the two. That pan around was all one shot. But I think it came out. Suede gave a great performance, and we just wrapped for that day. And then everybody huddled in warmth, and we took them out to pizza. This is where I think somebody said, Brad should have said, we're here to view the tapestries. I love that shot, too. Just like, that's not even a real person. But, so I told Doug, I was like, okay, despite this, he's like, no, you're not the world's greatest director. I was like, but here's the thing. I could hand you Battlefield Earth, Doug, and I think you could edit it in such a way that you can make it a good movie. That is your strength. And all of the producers actually agreed with me. I'm like, Doug's an editor. Like, he basically is an editor first, director second. So it's like, no matter what you get, you will pull something good out of this, and I'll be damned if he didn't. It's not always perfect. There's still problems we've had, but it worked out. And that's Doug's strength as an editor. He's the best editor I know, one of the best. And that's where his keen skills really came in. I should probably talk about this scene. So we invaded Jason and Jory's house, and they said we could use a wall to basically... We wrote the scene where we were going to duct tape what was going to be my friend Victoria to the wall. Like you've seen in YouTube videos and high school pranks and college pranks, and Victoria couldn't do it because we changed the schedule up and had to shoot on Easter. So Lisa volunteered and said, I'll totally do it. Let me do this. Like, I want to help any way I can. So we're like, okay. So we go in there, and we had a bunch of problems from the beginning. One, we had the wrong colored tape. I thought this was going to be like colored tape or something, and really goofy looking. As we're doing this, I'm just like, this is not working the way I thought it would. This is looking more creepy than funny. Because the joke of it was they were supposed to just have her plastered against the wall, and the joke was, how did they do that so quickly? Like, they would have had to have spent time doing this. It was so ridiculously over the top. That's where the humor came from. So we sort of plaster her arms up, and I handled the right arm, and because of my background in sort of physical therapy, I know how the muscles work, so I made a sling out of it and said, can you relax your right arm? And she goes, yes. So her right arm was fine. Poor Doug and poor Juaria were kind of taking the left, and they don't know how to do it. We're running out of time fast. So she had to kind of prop her left arm up, and it was getting sore. And I kept trying to readjust it, but you couldn't do it without taking all of the tape off again, and we were losing time. She then told me later that she also made the mistake of locking her knees, which also was giving her problems. So she's up there. We're trying desperately to set up the shot, and she starts to get like kind of a little woozy or something. She asks for some water. I give her some water. She starts coughing a lot. I'm just like, okay, are you okay? We can take you down. Like, seriously, don't be a martyr. And she's like, I just need to get this arm down. So she takes the left arm down, the one that was sore, and she literally just pulls herself out of this. Like, just thunk, like that. And I'm like, are you okay? We can take you down entirely. And after about, like, maybe 10 seconds, she's like, I need out. Yeah, I'm done. I'm just done. She literally steps forward. It was like, in retrospect, it's kind of funny because she stepped forward like the mummy and just simply walked out of it. It was like, rip! And there she is, and she walks out of it. But because I think her knees were locked or something, she got weak-kneed or something, she like sinks into the ground. And then there was this moment of just like, okay, everybody give her room. Like, we let her lay on the ground. We got her some Gatorade and stuff like that. But so she took about maybe, I don't know, 10 minutes, and, she was fine, and it became this moment where, like, just all of this stuff built up, and I'm trying to tell people not to Twitter this stuff, because we had an incident earlier where, like, I just was looking for Allison at the airport. I called Allison's mom, and Allison's mom, who sounds really sweet, was really upset that somehow we had lost her daughter. I was like, she's not lost. Her flight's... I just was, like, trying to call her, and I was given the wrong number. I'm given the home number. It's like, she's like, don't lose my daughter. So it was like, this is on my mind. I'm just like, Lisa needs to say what happened. Lisa's parents or friends or whatever do not need to read this on Twitter. So I'm like, everybody stop twittering about this till Lisa's okay. There's 8 billion things going on. And I swear to God, I walked outside for 1 minute talking to Holly, and this is where I had like a breakdown, because I walked outside and I'm staring into the woods behind Jason and Jory's backyard, and I'm just like, if I walked out into the woods and just left, could I, would anybody notice? Like, walking away like Lao Tzu on the water buffalo, just like never to return, walk into the sunset. And, I'm like, no, I obviously have responsibilities. I would never do that. But I'm just like, man, I wish I could. And there's a very funny Red Dwarf story from the show Red Dwarf, where the Lister's talking about how a woman screwed him up so bad that he was looking at a squirrel. He's like, man, I wish I had your life. You have to worry about nothing. And the cat says, man, that's bad. When a woman screws you up so bad, you want to become a squirrel. I was having like that same moment. I was like looking at some squirrel. I'm just like, man, I wish I could trade places with you. So we came back in, and Lisa's adamant about doing this shot. And I'm like, no. We know you couldn't do this one. She's like, no, I really want to do it. Let me do it. I was like, no. So we came up with this way around it. Just we wrapped her basically in this duct tape blanket that we had just made, and that way, if there happened to be any problems, we didn't think there would be, but if there would, she could just throw the blanket off, and that worked. So somewhere out of this, weeks later, somebody is like, there's this rumor that you guys crucified some dude upside down on Easter, and like, I read this, and I'm just like, what are they talking about? Like, it took me like an hour of trying to think about what the hell they could do. It's like, I had no clue. I'm like, crucified upside down? What? So finally I kind of figured, I was like, are they talking about that? It's like, I had no clue. I just ignored it. Because I'm just like, I have no clue what they're talking about. It's like, whatever. Stuff just gets started, I guess. Well, apparently somewhere out there, I start getting more emails, and somebody's just like, there's this guy on YouTube, and he's got this video, and I'm like, okay, and they're like, and he's just like, I have secret inside information that they crucified somebody, and all of these, and there were all these accidents, and Channel Awesome's going down, and I'm gonna come out, I'm a whistleblower, and I'm like, I'm reading all of these things, I'm just laughing, like, I'm just like, this is just hilarious. I'm like, okay, whatever, yeah, I guess we crucify people upside down or whatever. Again, I'm just thinking, how can anyone believe this? This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So, well, apparently never underestimate what people will believe on the internet, no matter how ridiculous. this starts showing up on our own forums, and it's just like, did you crucify people? I want to know. And like, the fact that anybody would even ask that with a straight face just boggles my mind. And I was pretty content to just let people on the net make fools of themselves, because I'm just like, this is just silly. And to be fair, they did a really good job of that. I'm just like, I can't believe what I'm reading. This is just priceless. But so eventually I was like, all right, I've had enough of this, because I keep answering these emails. I'm like, so I did a post and explained what happened, and like, that's it. And I've never heard anything since. So I don't know what happened to the great big footage about, how somebody was going to reveal all of the secrets, but like, I guess maybe they realized that there was no secret there or whatever, but they made a pretty funny spectacle of themselves, so whatever. But so anyway, but Doug comes in one day and he's just like, what are you doing, Rob? I'm like, I'm explaining how we didn't have to crucify people upside down on the set. And Doug's like, the internet's a very strange place. I'm like, yes it is. So yeah, that's that story for anybody who's curious. Lisa and Lindsay were the most upset because they're like, A, this happened to Lisa. Nobody asked her, we were keen on asking her permission if we ever talk about it at all, and we got the okay, so we're fine talking about it now. But like, is Lindsay and Lisa, it's like, nobody gave a crap about Lisa. And Lindsay was up, she's like, they couldn't even get the gender right. It was some dude, and they were upside down, and Lindsay's just like, it was a girl, and she's fine, and nobody cares about her. Like, one person posted in the forums is like, is anybody upset that nobody cares how Lisa is? It's all just about, like, ooh, look at what we have to report, and like, that bothered Lisa, I think, more than anything. Like, she was talking about that, and Lindsay too, and he's like, nobody gives a crap. It's all just like some tabloid expose or whatever, so, but yeah, and I guess she started getting emails, and she's just like, I don't know, talk to Rob. Whatever he said was fine. So it's like, it's just funny how the internet works. I think Doug and I both come from the approach of, how can you not laugh at this? It's just so ridiculous. So this scene with me as the knight was a holdover from the original draft again, where it was actually in a dungeon, and we were going to do it like Last Crusade. Brad was going to go in like Indiana Jones and pass the 3 tests, and I think he was supposed to find the cup of the gamer, the drink of the true gamer. And he looks at all these sodas, and he grabs them out and he's like, this is the drink of a true gamer. And I was going to play the knight and come up and try to attack them, and it was revealed that it was me. And Doug was going to be like, how'd you even get here so fast? He's like, oh, I just took the 405. Traffic kind of sucked, but there's ways around it. And Doug decided to remove all dungeons, so that got nixed, and I just apparently am there. And I came up with the line, the storm drain of secrets, just as a way just to, explain what this is doing here. I got a lot of flack for this. Well, I guess I did because I'm the writer, but people are just like, the Power Glove wasn't around in 1983, and I tried to get around that by saying it was a super secret device, and that was, smuggled out by American industrialist spies. I was just hinting that Nintendo was around longer than the Japanese had let on, and American corporate industrialist spies smuggled this out, and Jaffer's got a hand of it. I guess nobody bought it or cared, so I was like, I tried, because I knew the Power Glove wasn't around, and I tried to write a way around it, but, whatever. I love the wantonness of just my character being so useless. I did a number of pratfalls. It was kind of fun. So, as you can see, it's getting sunny out. This day saved us, because if it had rained, we really would have been sunk. And it's a continuity error, because it's cloudy out one second and sunny out the next, but I was hoping Doug would color correct it. He didn't. I guess he didn't have time, so we just rolled with it. The way... the only continuity thing I did is, as the battle progresses, I made sure to mess up the wig more and more. Like, I was becoming increasingly more disheveled. So, I probably should mention a couple of the scenes that I had missed. The animation scene, I think, is brilliant. Doug wanted to do the Deathly Hallows animation. We contracted Jim Troken, our roommate, who played the guy that gets blown up in the beginning, to do it. He did a spectacular job. He used some images, made up some others, and put it all together. I think it's a brilliant scene. One of my earlier drafts of the script, some of that was put out earlier, almost like a Lord of the Rings intro, like Galadriel talks about the One Ring, and Doug didn't want that either, so we didn't go with that. So it ends up there, and it works fairly well. It's a lot of stuff delivered fast, so I'm not sure if it's worth the wait or not, but, you know, I think audiences bought it once it came out with it, so it was okay. This speech, as I said, Doug's not really big on speech writing. He kind of just does these rambly sort of speeches. So I completely rewrote this speech from the ground up and just spoofed Lord of the Rings. I said, you're here, Doug, you're like Aragorn, you're addressing the troops. Let's just do this Lord of the Rings style, because my sort of satire, my favorite satire, is just direct. I love the Zucker Brother films, the classic Zucker Brothers. I love South Park. There's some of Family Guy I really like. Not all of it, but some of it when it's done well I really like. Where they just go for a direct satire. It's like, we are ripping this off wholesale, and that is part of the joke. So I literally just took Aragorn's speech and reworded it to match the critic. And again, we have the science versus magic dichotomy here. Not played up as well as I would have liked. I don't know why I'm screaming like Tarzan. Doug said that in editing. He's like, there's this person who's screaming like a little girl, and it's just hilarious. I can't keep a straight face while editing, and I was wondering who the hell is it? And it's you, Rob. And I was like, yeah. I was just trying to make the character just really ridiculous. Just as pathetic as possible. But we may have lost some of that science versus nature bit, but the earliest draft, we were going to have Aeon and Malachite, which I guess were two names I came up with. Doug, I think, wanted Astaroth, but I said that's too close to Bedknobs and Broomsticks. They used Astaroth, so I went with Aeon. I found it in a book somewhere. It seemed to match. I think it means like apex or mountaintop or something, no clue, but it sounded cool enough to me, and originally I was going to go with Dr. Insano as the descendant of Aeon. We were going to have Aeon, or Malachite curses all of Aeon's descendants and says that even though technology takes over, all of Aeon's descendants will become more stupider and stupider. Much like Ernest Scared Stupid, that plot point, that cut to Dr. Insano. It was going to be Insano who was the descendant of Aeon, and Insano was going to have more of a prominent role, and it was going to be technology versus magic with Insano in it, representing technology. Insano finally, I think, either gives the ring to Mati or something like that, and it's the ring that kills him, or Insano just fails. He tries to take out Malachite and can't because he's a moron. It probably worked out for the best that it didn't work that way, because Spoonie was very big and was like, I don't want to do Insano. I think the fan reaction on Kick-Assia was so bad with Insano, even though it's Spoonie's character and Spoonie says there's no continuity, the fans had a little piss fit over it, just like they didn't like, I guess, what we did with Insano. And the other thing is Insano exhausts Spoonie. He's like, I don't want a lot of action with Insano. If we could make it minimal, go for it. So we nixed that. Actually, I didn't find out about that afterwards, but it was fortuitous we didn't go with that because of that. So he's like, I'd rather shelve Insano for something later, just make him minimal. So that scene. Okay, so Suede, who is an awesome guy, like all Mormons I've met, is just like the nicest guy on the planet. He didn't have a sword, so Bargle lent him this Kill Bill katana. And he pulls this katana out of the sheath and is pointing it at me. And the first thing I did was like, Suede, and I point the katana away from me. So Suede holds it well behind his back, as you see there. And I made it very clear. I'm like, no other producer, because I care about the producer's safety. I'm like, no other producer is going up against this katana. So I went up against Suede. If an executive gets gored, so be it. An executive gets gored. I'm not having it happen to, one of our producers. That didn't happen, but what did happen is in the middle of one of these fights, Suede accidentally bashed me on the head. And left a nice little kind of bump there and a nick, and it was bad. I had a splitting migraine for the next 4 days. And I think this is part of what led to the breakdown I had the other day. I was like, can I just walk into the woods now? Because I was done. My head was throbbing so much, and all of this stuff went down with the trouble with trying to get that shot done fast, and with Lisa, and with trying to come up with a different shot, and all of this is going down as my head is throbbing. Like, I can barely see straight. And I still have to help film things. I have to help set things up. I have to drive producers around. Spoonie, I guess, who has migraines. I love this scene where Doug and I run back and forth in the background. We plan that. I'm running so weird with my hands up in the air. Really pathetic. Lord Cat, I should also say, gave a great cameo. We wrote that specifically for him because we thought he'd be perfect. And to me, it's one of the best scenes in the film. That actually was an accidental take. He just dropped Mickey by accident. So Spoonie was just like, dude, I have migraines too. I don't know how you're doing it. And I'm just like, it won't get done if I don't do it. Like, I'm the assistant DPM. It's like, I just breezed through it. Like, I took as many meds as I could, and I popped a muscle relaxer after the shoot, and I just, like, slept for a day. But, yeah, it was really bad. This scene I shot personally, and I'm just like, let me do this scene, Doug. I want it exactly like Lord of the Rings, where Gandalf and Éomer come in, and I framed it that way. And I had a lot of fun with these scenes. Ed and I both shot this stuff. I think this one's Ed. This one's me, because I remember insanely trying to run left to right. That may be Ed. They're all great shots, and Doug edited this beautifully. And the payoff now with Jew Wario, I think, is just great. I like it too because Doug came up with this and it's brilliant because it's my sort of satire. It's direct. There was a light in the end of the two towers that blinded the orcs, so Doug did that, only he made it Jew Wario. And it's like, there's another one of the scenes, I wish I came up with it, and Doug did, and it's so brilliant. And it's shot exactly like Lord of the Rings. I love the way this was all put together. And I need to thank Ed here because I had to act in these scenes and do all this battle stuff. That was a happy accident with the car, by the way, and Doug added the whistle. I had to act in these scenes, and, like, I can't film. And, like, Ed was second cameraman, and, I don't know, may have been Bargo, I think, doing some of the other stuff. And if Doug wasn't in the shot, he also grabbed the camera. And, Ed was a lifesaver. He did those battle scenes so great. He has a real kinetic energy. He gave us sort of a Michael Bay effect to a lot of these shots, which I think was perfect. I couldn't be more grateful to him. And we actually talked after the shooting because we were giving each other compliments because I was telling him how much I loved his stuff. And he's like, well, I wanted to tell you. He's just like, if I didn't watch you film that yourself, I would have thought you guys tripoded all of this or had a real Steadicam because it was shot so smoothly. He's like, how the hell do you do that? And I was like, I don't know. I've been shooting with Doug since high school, and I always like things to look cinematic, so I'm just used to doing it. I wrote that line, Pussy of Puppety Doom. It was one of my favorite Gandalf lines there. And I'm just used to doing it, and he was just like, oh, it's really awesome. I was like, well, I'm a real big fan of yours, man. Like, you saved so many shots with minimal direction. Doug didn't have time to direct Ed all that well. Doug's just like, here, do this as quick as you can. And it works for me because I generally know what Doug wants. I can sort of half read his mind. But with Ed, he was just flying by the seat of his pants, and he did it. We actually both were by the end of it because Doug didn't have time to direct. He's like, whatever, get the shot done, you know. I love this shot. This is very Lord of the Rings there, the Peter Jackson slow-mo. I love these shots of Malachite here. Like, to me, this is when Doug was editing it, I was like, this is where it felt like a real movie again. I love this moment with Spoonie. You idiot! Spoonie does that sort of like, maybe, so well. This was one of the earliest shots Doug came up with. He wanted a truck or something to hit Malachite. And Phalis, or I think it was Phalis, maybe it was Jim, whoever did it. I'm sorry, I don't remember who. We have a lot of effect shots. They did such a brilliant job on that. Like, I was just like, I thought for sure we weren't going to be able to do that, and it worked perfectly. I love how easily he takes them all out. Orlando is a trained black belt, and was able to give us so many great stunts. This is another thing. They decided to make Jaffers really pathetic and just look like he's completely browbeaten. We were actually going to have Jaffers land at the end of the end credits back in the field and then get up and stumble away, but we didn't quite do that. I think Doug had something planned with Linkara. And I love this moment, too, because I wrote this in here. Originally, Brian just runs away, but I wrote this whole thing in there about just, like, you know, is that the last thing you're geek? Remember to look at my Facebook page, you know. I wrote that in there because it's something Brian would do. He's a great guy. He's very self-promoting, and I think it just made it more hilarious. This scene with the witch, oh, I know him. That was my half-assed attempt to reference the earlier scene to give it some justification with, I know what hunts you and this and that. I don't know if it really worked. Again, it was trying to tie plot points together because I thought the plot really wasn't gelled well enough. Trying to make the earlier scenes have more of a purpose. I say Doug's really good at slapstick. The crotch shot is the one I could have done without. I think I know what Doug was going for. I think he really wanted a, I think it's very Bugs Bunny. There was a Bugs Bunny cartoon where Bugs dresses up like Leopold Stokowski and directs this tenor, and he moves his hand around up and down, and the tenor has to follow all of his actions. I think Doug was tapping to that, but I would have preferred if Malachi made Doug dance around or do something crazy. Just a million crotch shots. It's a little too Family Guy with me, like the kick in the kick in the shins where Peter Griffin goes ah. It's like it gets old too quickly. The second I came up with the idea of the Power Glove, I'm like, we have to have him say this line. I love the Power Glove. It's so bad. But Orlando is a trained black belt, and told Doug this, and he's just like, I can give you any stunt you want. I'll do all of these, you know, things with the pole. You know, he's got incredible skill and a lot of talent. One of the things he said, and this was some other rumor where people are just like, yeah, I heard somebody did a backflip on cement, and they broke their neck. How dare you make one of your producers do that? You know, once again, people no clue what they're talking about. Orlando came up to Doug and said, I can do a backflip. And at first Doug's like, prove it. He's like, I'm not doing anything if I know you can do it. I love this payoff with Spoonie. I think I wrote this in kind of later on in the script. It's just so pathetic. But, you know, Doug says, prove it. So Orlando does it. And does it flawlessly. And Doug's like, okay, are you sure you can do this on camera? And Orlando's like, I really want to do this. Yeah, I can give this to you. It's going to be awesome, this and that. Orlando had done it a number of times for Doug. He had done all these other things. The time came to do it, and, you know, it was very clear Orlando wanted to do it. He volunteered. Doug never asked him to. Doug was pretty clear. He's like, I really don't want you to do this. And Orlando's just like, no, I really want to, and I can. I love Lindsay's performance here in particular. Chicken to China, the Chinese chicken. And this is the payoff with her running around. And this was the only thing I think Lindsay was correct about. I originally had it in the script that Nella is called in, and she says, I hate you, after Nella gets punched, and Lindsay's like, no, that's too mean, and this is all part of Lindsay's, like, we can't be mean to each other, and I didn't get it, but they went with the thumbs up, and, you know, everything's cool, and the more I looked at it, the more I was like, Lindsay was 100% correct on that. It's a much funnier take, and it fits with the spirit of those two. Because looking at the videos now and I think about it, Nella really would be more like that. So that was a good call on Lindsay's part. And I love Nella's performance here. I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. But yeah, getting back to that, like, it was practice, like 3 or 4 times beforehand, offset. Worked perfectly. We did it in the field. It's muddy, so it's a soft landing, and we did it the first time, and Orlando landed on his shoulder, and I had this oh shit moment. I love this one. This may have been my line. I think Shiva will get over it. May have been Doug's too. Actually, it may have been Doug's. I think it was pretty brilliant. And maybe the other scene I was thinking of, that was his. And that's all. That's I think it's satirizing both Raiders with the guy with the sword, but also Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where the Shredder just shows off all these moves. I think a lot of that is what this is based on. They all take him on at once, very Ninja Turtles style from the first Turtles movie. Great smile. But So he lands on his shoulder. I have this, oh shit moment. Like, I'm reaching in the phone because I filmed this. I flipped the camera off. I'm reaching for the phone, ready to dial 911. Orlando jumps up and is like, I'm okay. I'm fine. He's bouncing around. He's like, I'm all right. Ow, that hurt, but I'm fine. I'm fine. We talk to him, and he is adamant about doing it again. And it's not like Lisa. I mean, Lisa, we had to duct tape to a wall if we wanted to do the shot again. That's easy. We're just like, well, we just won't duct tape you to a wall. That requires the effort of a number of people. Orlando, I shut the camera off. I talked to him. I was like, you do not need to do this. There is no reason to do it. Channel Awesome is not asking you to do it. We are basically telling you don't do it. It's not necessary. And Orlando basically looks at me. He's like, I'm going to do this backflip again and correctly, whether the camera is rolling or not. And at that point, I'm screwed. I'm just like, okay, there's nothing I can do. And I'm pretty sure I got that on camera somewhere because I'm just like, okay, I want you to say that again into the camera because, like, I definitely want it said, that you're doing this of your own volition. And he's like, yes. So I'm like, okay, there is nothing I can do now. We would have to tackle him to the ground to stop him. So we rolled again. I made the sign of the cross, I think, and I'm shaking as I'm filming this, my bladder just is ready to drop. I'm like, oh dear God, do it right. Executed it perfectly with Bennett. Bennett did a spectacular job. The flip was executed perfectly, and Orlando was like, yes. And to this day, Orlando still thinks it's the coolest thing on film. And he comes over, he's like, look at that. That's awesome. That's great. I can't believe how cool it looks. And so, I still read the occasional somebody will send me an email. He's like, how'd you make somebody do a backflip? I was like, he thought it was awesome, and he did it of his own volition. I can't stop him without tackling him to the ground. So that, I think, is the other story, and I believe those are the worst injuries. And the ironic thing about it, again, is I think I actually had the worst injury. I had the migraine for 4 days and probably a small concussion. Orlando said his shoulder was sore for a bit, but he was all right. I will say Iron Liz Orlando accidentally nicked Iron Liz on the foot with a pole, so she had a stiff ankle for a couple days, and Lisa got lightheaded. That was the extent of everything that went wrong, but I lived to write this scene. I've been waiting to write a Mati scene where he goes off. And I love these lines. It's like, I'm tired of getting kidnapped by polluting industrious, losing out to stupid key. I just live to write that scene. It was one of the few things in the film I think I'm actually legitimately proud of. I love the way this panned out. I even had an extended scene where Bargo blows a balloon animal. He says, here, do me a favor. He blows this long balloon, hands it to Malachite and says, make a balloon, you know what I want you to do? I want you to make a balloon animal out of this, because that's what I think you are, you party clown, you circus clown. And Malachite's just giving him this death glare the whole time. I guess Doug didn't like it, so we didn't use it, but I missed that scene. I wish we would have done that, just hammering in how much Bargo's digging his own grave and how pissed Malachite's getting. So this is the payoff with the rings. It all comes together here. I knew instantly the second we were going to kill Matioff, we're doing this Star Trek 2 style. And people are upset that Spoonie came in from the other direction. Doug had to flip the shot for some reason. It was actually shot the other way, but I forget why the shot was flipped, but there's some technical reason for it. It's a film flub, whatever. But yeah, I knew I wanted to do Spock. Doug basically wrote the scene very basically and said, Rob, you're the Star Trek 2 fan. Spoof Star Trek 2. So I pretty much, from the speech, Bargo's speech to Malachite onward, wrote that whole ending up until Linkara comes in Doug's bedroom at the end. Originally, I wanted a little more build-up with Bargo. I was going to have Bargo in the middle of this battle, and there's what are we going to do? There's nothing to do, and Bargo gets up like Spock does in Star Trek 2 and calmly, logically walks toward Malachite, but Doug said it wouldn't work for the flow. He might be right. I think it's a better surprise this way. I think it works. For all of the trouble we had shooting this, Doug, I think, worked his ass off and worked his magic in the editing room, and it's not perfect, but it came out much better than I ever thought it would, and I think much better than Doug thought it would, because Doug wanted the stakes to be higher. He wanted this big, dramatic, fantasy, epic comedy, and in some ways I think he may have been a little misguided. I don't think he had the plot fleshed out quite right to pull that off initially. But with all the disasters that happened, it's very clear that he didn't get his vision. I mean, it was rough for both of us, because I clearly didn't get mine, and that's the way the cookie crumbles. But I felt even worse for Doug, like far worse, because Doug had a vision, and even though it wasn't my vision, it's just like, so be it. But Doug's vision was this one thing, and he couldn't do it. He ended up having to turn it more into a comedy, and it may make the film better, it may not have, but he lost so much that I felt really bad for him, because like, at least the one hope I got of it was like, well, at least Doug gets his vision. So it'll sink or swim on him, and hopefully it'll swim, and but when he couldn't even get his vision out, it was like, well, that sucks, because now we're both screwed. I didn't get what I wanted. And the changes Doug made, he didn't get what he wanted. So, but it makes, I think, for a flawed but at least interesting story to tell, and an interesting movie that I think Doug really pulled off well. And despite all the problems, despite the fact that I say it was the worst experience Doug and I had doing a film because of all of these disasters and nervous breakdowns involved, and the way everything fell apart, the way things came together after it fell apart made it worth it. The help from the sorry, that smack, I wrote that into the script, and like Bargo delivered it perfectly. I'm all about making serious scenes funny by going dramatic and then ridiculous. So, and this is the one shot that I will totally toot my own horn. This is an exact copy of the Star Trek II shot where Kirk says no, and then it pulls away from him with Spock's body against the glass, and Kirk there. And like, Doug loved it. He faded out extra slowly, because like, that is the exact same shot. So I did like 12 takes of that to make sure it was perfect. Bennett complains that we got the only take of him looking at the camera. That's Doug. I didn't edit it. So Bennett went to a really dark place delivering this that scene. He was like really crying, and it's like, are you okay? Because I'm like, it's like, I'm fine. I'm getting to a dark place. I guess he has dramatic acting chops, and he likes to tap into that. I'm sorry we took the lesser take, but yeah, he gave it his all in that scene. He's just like, dead kittens, or something like that. Doug wanted to cut that line, but I argued that it should stay in, because it was like the humor of this scene comes from the ridiculousness of it. The only thing that kills me is we should have put like the Planeteer flag over the oatmeal can and picked it up and folded it up like they do with the Starfleet flag, but we forgot to do that. I would have thought it was much funnier with that. The other thing that kills me is paw. We ad-libbed this. I told Spoony to do this at the last second. I was like, I want a quick shot of you saying this line. So it was very Gandalf. I think it worked. And we're fighting against the time here. Like, the sun is really setting. We have like 15 minutes to do this. And Paw had one prop to remember, and it was a golden kazoo that Holly had lent him, because we wanted the bagpipes coming out of the kazoo. That was the joke. And I wrote this joke like weeks before we shot the film, and Doug's like, this will be hilarious. Paw forgot the kazoo. I love you, man, but I could have killed him that day, because we are rushing, trying to find a prop, any prop. Somebody's like, get a comb and a piece of paper, get a reed of grass, get like, and we're like, the sun is setting, and we're like losing time, and like, I am panicking. I'm like, what the hell are we gonna do? At the last second, I remembered that we had this broken pipe. Doug broke the Ask That Guy pipe by accident. I was like, we have this one piece of the pipe. I was like, Paw, blow into that like it's a kazoo. Maybe we can trick the audience. So if you're wondering why that doesn't look like a real kazoo, or what the hell it is, it's the broken Ask That Guy pipe. But the funny thing is, I think Holly was even more pissed than I was. She's just like, and it's my kazoo, god damn it! So, but it worked, and we were able to get it before the sun fully set. It actually worked well with that shot with Tom there. I like this closer shot here. I tried to pan up. Yeah, I think I wrote this sort of captain's log like Kirk has at the end of 2. I love the line, I've never dealt with death. I think I parodied Red Dwarf. I think there was some line about like kicking death in the groin and patting myself on the back for my ingenuity. That comes from a scene where Rimmer at the end of one of the Red Dwarf seasons literally knees Death in the groin. The payoff now from the coffee. I love this shot. Doug framed that perfectly. Again, he's not a bad cinematographer when he has the time to do it. So he knows what he's doing. I love the David Lynch green there. I think it works there because we're supposed to be sad. I got a lot of flack from some people about turning the exposure up. Two things I want to mention about that quickly is, A, I had the exposure down too much during the first movie, and Doug gave me the direct order, always turn the exposure higher than you need it from now on because we can darken it. Okay, I did that. What Doug didn't tell me is that with the new camera, which we didn't use last year, the exposure has to be set just right. You can't turn it up higher. It's actually better to have it darker and then he can lighten it. In post, it works better that way with the new camera. Well, Doug never told me that, so I'm going by the old rules, so it's up higher anyway. So some scenes got a little washed out. The other thing is, I had to make an executive decision on the first day of shooting. We're along a busy street, and there are cars everywhere in the background, and I thought, I may as well give it the white glow of the windows, because if I just keep the exposure set to normal, those cars are going to be a big distraction. You're supposed to be looking at the actors and you're just going to be seeing vroom, 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 you know, in the background. So I made that executive decision. I may have been wrong about that. I personally think it probably was the better call to at least have a little bit of white drown out in the back and still be able to see all of the actors framed and see their faces, versus turning it down and just having cars passing left and right and just people looking at this and being like, well, what the hell? So, I should mention Linkara. I was mentioning some actors that do characters and some that can sort of do just a straight up just regular performance. Linkara's good at that too. I love the way he delivers these closing scenes. I love this. Oh, they haven't found a cure for death yet. And I love it when he turns around, he's like Linkara, and he's like, yes, he delivered this really kind of naturally, and I think he sells it, gives it credibility, which is necessary, I think, in an epic comedy. It's like they can't all be characters all the time. Sometimes you have to play it a little low-key, and, he gets a little more high-key here near the end. Who would you get to do this? And I like the idea of the bum. I think it's funny. This original ending, this coming up was going to be the original ending to the film, and we ran out of time, and we didn't get to do it, and Doug fought me hard on this. That first he didn't want it, then he said we'll put it on the DVD, and then he didn't want to include it in the final cut of the film because he was insanely like, I don't want to George Lucas it. I don't want to change things. I'm like, Doug, we're not making Greedo shoot first. This was meant to be the original ending, and we're not changing anything in the middle of the movie. This was just how it was meant to be. We're not changing anything really big like Lucas does. He's like, the audience will never stand for it. They won't have it. It's like, Doug, I think you're giving your fans way too much credit for being that obsessive about it. So eventually he relented, and we got it on here. And this is what I wanted originally. Jim did these special effects. They're spectacular. My dad wrote the Star Trek II music. Bargo did the little closer that I wrote, and it's going to be the setup for the 4-year, which we're already writing. So we actually do have a plan, and because I think Doug grew so much as a director, and because we're doing things different now by making it more collaborative with everybody being involved, I think next year hopefully should go smoother. We're already starting now, so we're ahead of the game. And as I'm recording this now, I think it's late July, so fingers crossed. Definitely a tough shoot, but I'm grateful for everybody involved. And while we had a bad time, I'm so happy that the producers enjoyed themselves. That really makes me happy more than anything. So I would rather we have a sucky time and the producers enjoy themselves. Actually, I'd rather we all enjoy ourselves, but I'd rather the most people enjoy themselves and, just Doug and I and, us running the show, so... But, yeah, that's pretty much the whole movie. I should credit, I believe this is Benzai's girlfriend, Marion, who did these closers here, and I think they're absolutely spectacular. Really great work. Special thanks to Holly for all the line producing work and everybody who did the special effects. Mike for, funding all this and caring about the producers enough to do what they wanted, whether it be cancel the film or keep it going. So, and to Doug for basically having the foresight to be a really good Hollywood-style director and not a crappy one who would just be like, we're doing it my way or the highway. He grew so much as a director, and I couldn't be more proud of how it panned out despite all the problems. So from here on out, I think it's a learning process, and we're definitely growing. So see you all at the 4-year, and hopefully it'll be even better than this one. Cheers.